In tonight's news edition, His Majesty the King attends the 26th Arab Summit in Sharm el-Sheikh and discusses with leaders on the sidelines of the summit a unified strategy against extremism in the region. Iraqi special forces advance on central Tikrit as U.S.-led coalition planes join the largest offensive yet against Daesh terrorists holed up in the city. And 2 Russian cosmonauts and an American astronaut dock at the International Space Station, where they are expected to spend a year. Good evening and welcome to a new edition of the news. His Majesty the King returned home after taking part in the 26th Arab League Summit that opened today in the Egyptian resort of Sharm el-Sheikh, with the participation of Arab leaders as well as representatives of regional and international organizations. His Majesty met separately with a number of Arab leaders present at the summit, including Egyptian President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi, Bahrain's King Hamad bin Isa Al Khalifa, Iraqi President Fuad Massoum, President of the Republic of Djibouti Ismail Omar Guelleh, and Somali President Hassan Sheikh Mahmoud. Discussions tackled ongoing developments in the Middle East, especially the crises in Yemen, Iraq, Syria, Libya, and Palestine, and to which His Majesty urged political solutions. His Majesty and Arab leaders also discussed the fight against terrorism, and His Majesty emphasized the need to adopt a collective strategy to confront all forms of violence and extremism. The 26th Arab League Summit continues in Sharm el-Sheikh tomorrow, concluding with a news conference. Syria's was vacant for the 4th year. Key issues on the table included the 2002 Arab Peace Initiative and on Palestinian-Israeli peace, a resolution on East Jerusalem that reiterates there would be no peace without East Jerusalem becoming the capital of Palestine. The summit has already approved the creation of an Arab military force to fight against radical jihadists that are threatening the peace and security of the region. Prime Minister Abdullah Mansour deputized for His Majesty King Abdullah at the summit's remaining sessions, and just a few minutes ago, he delivered a speech on behalf of His Majesty. During the speech, the Prime Minister said, "This summit convenes at a very critical time in the region, which calls for a unified strategy to confront terrorism and protect the image of Islam and its values. Extremism is threatening the entire region, and to confront that threat, efforts must be geared towards all aspects, including social, political, and ideological. As Muslims and Arabs," the Prime Minister said, "we must stand together to confront these threats." On the crisis in Yemen, he said Jordan supports the legitimacy of Prime Minister Abd Rabbu Mansour Hadi and said, "Today we take part in the military operation aimed at protecting the integrity of Yemen, voicing hope that Yemen will be able to regain its security." On the Palestinian issue, Mansour said remains in the heart of the crisis in the region and called on the international community to push for a just solution. On Jerusalem, he said Jordan will exert all efforts to stop Israeli violations against the holy city and its shrines, as well as the steadfastness of its people. On Syria, he said a political solution remains the only way to end the crisis. Meanwhile, Saudi Arabia-led airstrikes against Houthis in Yemen continued today, targeting a base where Houthi fighters have set up long-range missiles and pointed them towards the southern Yemeni city of Aden and neighboring countries. A Saudi military spokesman said airstrikes have destroyed most ballistic missiles, which Houthi fighters captured from Yemeni army. A Yemeni official attending the Arab summit in Sharm el-Sheikh said Iranian experts had brought in parts for the missiles at the base south of Sana'a, but Iran denies it has approved money or training to the Shiite Houthis. As airstrikes continued for a 3rd day, Saudi Arabia's Navy evacuated dozens of diplomats from Yemen, and the United Nations pulled out international staff. UN sources said the staff, numbering more than 100, were expected to relocate to several countries, including Jordan. While the operation is estimated to last for at least a month, the Yemeni Foreign Minister Riyad Yassin told reporters at the summit that ground forces may be needed in the next phase. Hadi joined Arab leaders at the Arab Summit in Sharm el-Sheikh, where he said the Saudi-led campaign was aimed at protecting Yemenis from failed aggression. He urged Yemen's army to protect state institutions and obey the orders of Yemen's legitimate leadership. Saudi King Salman bin Abdulaziz, for his part, said air operations would continue until Yemen achieved peace and security. Hadi left Sharm el-Sheikh for Saudi Arabia and is not believed to have any plans to go back to Yemen anytime soon. This report has more.
The crisis in Yemen follows its embattled president all the way to the Arab League summit in Egypt. There, in front of leaders from allies like Egypt and Saudi Arabia, Yemen President Abd Rabbu Mansour Hadi reinforces his support for Saudi military assistance.
I call for the continuation of Operation Decisive Storm until this gang announces its surrender, exits all occupied territories in the provinces, and leaves state institutions and military camps.
The Saudis started airstrikes this week against the Shiite Houthi rebels, who are expanding their control into southern Yemen. The airport in Sana'a is among the latest targets. Officials there say they're trying to repair the runways so they can facilitate the evacuation of UN staff. Back in Egypt, Hadi blames Iran for instigating the unrest.
For this, I tell the puppets of Iran and those with them, you are destroying Yemen with your adolescent trickery and the creation of internal and regional crises.
Tehran denies involvement in the crisis and has condemned the airstrikes.
Radical groups, including Al-Qaeda's Nusra Front, have seized the Syrian city of Idlib. By taking Idlib in the northwest, the insurgents now control a second province after Raqqa, a stronghold for Daesh terrorist group. Earlier, Syrian state television said the army was engaged in fierce fighting to restore the situation. Idlib is a city of 100,000 people and is close to the main strategic highway linking Damascus to Aleppo. The Syrian Observatory for Human Rights said the armed group entered the city from several sides, but the major push was from the northern and western sides. The offensive to capture the city began on Tuesday, and since then the Syrian army killed hundreds of fighters defending the city. On another front, Iraqi special forces advanced on central Tikrit as U.S.-led coalition planes joined the largest offensive yet against Daesh terrorists holed up in the city. The troops entered the Shishan district in southern Tikrit and the northern Al-Qadisiyah neighborhood yesterday after the U.S. and allied forces carried out airstrikes the previous night. The campaign was slowed yesterday evening by clashes with Daesh that claimed the lives of 4 and wounded 11 other soldiers. The force of more than 20,000 fighters and military personnel, the majority of them from Iranian-backed Shiite militias, launched their offensive on the 2nd of this month. Iraqi military commanders called for coalition airstrikes to break the deadlock, but the Shiite militia leaders said they did not need help. And over to Iran's nuclear talks. The foreign ministers of France and Germany joined the top U.S. and Iranian diplomats to help break an impasse in negotiations as Iran and major powers closed in on an accord that could form the basis of a long-term deal. U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry and Iranian Foreign Minister Mohammad Jawad Zarif have been in talks in Switzerland for the past days, trying to reach an outline agreement by the end of the month. By the end of the day, Iran's foreign minister assured reporters that progress has been made. German Foreign Minister Frank-Walter Steinmeier compared the talks in Switzerland to the final stage of a mountain climb. The end game of the long negotiations has begun, and the final meters are the most difficult but the most decisive ones, he said.
What you perfectly know is at stake is that Iran does have the right to have a civilian nuclear capability. But as far as nuclear bomb is concerned, it is a no. The discussions have been long and tough. We have made progress on some issues, but on some others we haven't made enough progress.
I believe we have made progress. I see that Germany and France are really serious about reaching an agreement, and I hope we can all work together in order to reach that agreement, because I know that the seriousness on our side is there, and I hope that this decision can be made by our negotiating partners to finish this.
And when we come back, lights out in cities around the world to mark Earth Hour, and kites fill up the skies in Washington, D.C. to celebrate the Cherry Blossom Festival. A Russian Soyuz successfully docked to the International Space Station, carrying a U.S. astronaut and 2 Russian cosmonauts who will stay on board for a year. The endeavor is not without risk, since the astronauts, who are exposed to more radiation in space, often experience bone and muscle loss and changes in their cardiovascular, immune, and other systems. The station, a $100 billion project of 15 nations, is a research laboratory that flies about 418 kilometers above Earth. Here's more.
Gradually raise the orbit of
This was the moment a Soyuz capsule carrying 2 Russian cosmonauts and an American astronaut arrived for the latest mission at the International Space Station. The mission for 2 of them, Scott Kelly and Mikhail Kornienko, is to stay for a whole year. It's a first for the ISS, where missions until now have been about half that. Scientists are trying to find out how the human body fares during longer stays in space. It's the first time anyone spent a year on the ISS, although 4 Soviet-era cosmonauts did that and more aboard the Mir space station. Kelly's identical twin brother, a former NASA astronaut, is serving as the ground-based subject. The 3rd crew member on this trip will return to Earth in September, but not without setting a new record himself. Gennady Padalko will have racked up 878 days in space by then, the longest total time anyone's ever achieved.
What began in Sydney in 2007 to promote climate change awareness has now spread to more than 7,000 cities worldwide. Earth Hour is a global campaign that encourages individuals and businesses to turn off non-essential electronics and lights for an hour from 8:30 to 9:30 p.m. on the last Saturday of March. Japan, Hong Kong, and the Philippines showed their commitment to climate change awareness. Tokyo's iconic tower was plunged into darkness, while in Hong Kong, around 4,000 businesses, buildings, and schools turned off their lights to mark Earth Hour. The Philippines took it up a notch, showing how electricity isn't needed to have some fun. Campaigners took part in a fitness dance routine to demonstrate a healthier and cleaner lifestyle.
All of these things are meant to encourage everybody that if all this Zumba that they're trying to promote, energy efficiencies that they're trying to promote, are really just ways and means to encourage everybody that if we are to address climate change, it starts with caring for yourself, and then that's the time it translates to caring for something else.
The Washington Monument was surrounded with a flurry of kites today as dozens took advantage of the windy weather. The event is part of the National Cherry Blossom Festival, which is a celebration of the cherry tree given to Washington from Japan as a gift and a sign of enduring friendship. Kites of all kinds filled the air, multicolored, American flag design, and some with fitting cherry blossom prints. The festival runs from March 20th until April 12, where thousands descend on D.C. to catch a glimpse of the thousands of cherry trees in bloom. Windy conditions did not deter Rafael Nadal from defeating fellow Spaniard Nicolas Almagro 6-4, 6-2 at the Miami Open. Murray is looking for his 10th Masters 1000th title and his third trophy in Miami, having won in 2009 and 2013, and it seems he's on the right track after beating Almagro in 89 minutes. We stay in Miami and the same tournament. Andy Murray had little trouble dealing with American Donald Young in his opening match, beating him 6-4, 6-2. Murray, a two-time winner in Miami, broke left-hander Young 4 times as he wrapped up the win in 82 minutes. World champion Lewis Hamilton splashed through the puddles at a rain-soaked circuit to secure pole position for Mercedes in a hectic Malaysian Grand Prix qualifying session. The Briton battled through the traffic just to survive the final cut and was rewarded with the 40th pole position of his career. He clocked 1 minute 48.8 seconds on his first lap, and the time was fast enough to hold off all challengers. Sebastian Vettel, who proved Ferrari's impressive early session form was a force to be reckoned with, came in second place. And finally, cool conditions prevail tonight with cloudy skies and continued chance for scattered showers, especially in the eastern regions. Winds will be northwesterly brisk, stirring dust in the desert areas. Tomorrow, a slight drop in temperature is expected, therefore it will be fair across the country and relatively hot in the Jordan Valley. Thundery rain may fall over the southern and eastern parts of the kingdom, with northeasterly moderate to brisk winds, again stirring dust in most areas. The Gulf of Aqaba should expect a fair night and warm day tomorrow, with northwesterly winds and slightly choppy seas. Next are the lows and highs for tonight and tomorrow. To end the news, here's a reminder of our top stories. His Majesty the King attends the 26th Arab Summit in Sharm el-Sheikh and discusses with leaders on the sidelines of the summit a unified strategy against extremism in the region. Iraqi special forces advance on central Tikrit as US-led coalition planes join the largest offensive yet against Daesh terrorists holed up in the city. And 2 Russian cosmonauts and an American astronaut dock at the International Space Station, where they are expected to spend a year. With that, we come to the end of tonight's news. I'm Nancy Khair. Thank you for watching and have a good night.